Kathy Castelli. I will call this meeting of the Educational Council to order, and I will now hand the meeting over to Danielle.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. The purpose for today's meeting is for us to come together to take a look at the 2021 proposed the calendar that we already have approved, but we wanted to take a look at it and have some discussion surrounding some potential changes to the calendar for the next school year, which would add some additional days for professional development for teachers. Based on what we're dealing with right now with the pandemic, we wanted to kind of be proactive and plan ahead and think about all of the professional development that we would like to provide to the teachers up front so that they're ready for the fall when we come back. Again, we don't know exactly right now exactly what that's going to look like, but we're thinking that we want to be able to be prepared and to prepare all of our staff for that moving forward. So we'd like to have some discussion around what suggestions we can make or changes to the calendar that we can make to kind of move forward. One of the thoughts that we had moving forward was to take a look at the beginning. Right now, we currently have professional development days. We have 3 of them in August, and then the students would be coming back to start the school day on the 27th. So we were looking to have some discussion surrounding that. Could we increase those 3 days to 5 days? And if we did, what would that look like? What would it look like to change the start of the school day? Which day would the kids come in? How do we want to do that? So I think that's kind of where we wanted to start off with our discussions and kind of move from there.
So just a question, Sal, I know in some previous messages, kind of never really clear from the state, there was some talk about starting school after Labor Day for students. That's kind of gone away, right?
Yeah, I emailed directly to the commissioner and I got an email back saying that they have not contemplated, nor do they plan on contemplating telling schools when they have to start.
Okay, perfect.
So I'd like to have some discussion about some thoughts about moving forward and looking at the calendar.
So Lou, I think you raised your hand.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So I mean, one suggestion would be if you wanted to do 5 professional development days right at the beginning of the year, we could move the March 19th teacher professional development day to Thursday. And that'll be an even swap for students and teachers. And if you wanted to, we could also move the November 3rd professional development day to Friday. So we'll accomplish a full week of training, and then we would have November 3rd off because it'll be a 1-for-1 swap. The only downside is that the students would go 182 days instead of 183.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
That would be how it would work. So teachers would maintain the 188, students would go down to 182. We'd accomplish the full week of training for the first week. And pretty much get to where we want to be.
Does anyone have any comments? If not, I do.
Go ahead, Kathy.
So Lou, I'm really kind of not in favor of reducing student days, especially this coming year. Given the environment that we're in, I just think it would be not in the best interest of the kids to actually reduce the number of days. But I mean, if that's what we end up having to go, so be it. But that wouldn't be my first choice. It would be my last choice.
Karen?
I agree with Kathy, especially in light of what's happened this year. I would not want to decrease the student days any lower than the 183. So perhaps we can come up with a different idea.
Something we thought about was if we did look at having Thursday, August 27th and Friday, August 28th as teacher professional development days. Then we were looking at making the anticipated last day of school be Monday, June 14th. The end date would then, well, we'd have to, right. So we'd have to move that. But then looking at those 6 early release days, taking 6 of the 8 early release days and making those 6 early release days for teachers and for students. So picking 6 of the 8, which is another thought out there.
Oh, I like that.
I'm sorry, then the anticipated last day of school would be 6/18.
So Ian, you want to speak?
How many days would that add on to the end of the school year? As, yeah, I know we have a proposed ending now. How many days does that end on to the end of the school year?
Just 2, I think, right? You said?
Yeah, choose too many.
So the 16th would be the,
Well, no, right now, the 10th is the end of the school year. So it would be the Friday and the Monday, which would bring us to the 14th.
which would be the 14th, right? I'm
So
sorry.
it's adding 2 on?
Yes.
It's adding 2 on. Choose too many to add on already?
Yeah.
Before snow? And then it shortens the amount of time before we start going into April? Nope. We're looking at an entire school district and a state and a country that did not have any time off. I'm looking at family time for everyone, not for students as well as staff.
And just to add to that, it would just be, well, I think Ann said it fine. Let's leave it at that.
Danielle, how does that compare to this year? Because we had 1 snow day and we're getting out the 16th, right?
We had 3. We had 3 snow days.
We did have 3, we did, but we are getting out on the 16th this year.
Okay.
Any other ideas then for possibly adding these extra days for professional development? Or any other thoughts? I mean, to me, I think I would not want to cut the student day days for the year, but I'm Karen.
How could you explain to me, because I'm not exactly sure what's going to be included in these extra professional development days? Is this totally COVID related for safety reasons? Maybe you could help me with that.
Sure, absolutely. So yes, again, our feeling is we're going to need to do a lot of professional development to prepare staff and coming back into the building, because we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. So we wanted to make sure that everyone understands what the new routines are going to look like, what the expectations are. We wanted to see if there was someone from the outside, someone with expertise in this area can come in and talk to our staff to prepare them for what this is going to look like. We do know right now, based on some of the things that we're reading, that things are going to look different coming into the school year, potentially in terms of nurses' offices, maybe more than 1 space for children if they're sick, if they're not. So there's a lot of things for us to kind of think about as we move forward. And so we want to make sure that we're completely preparing everyone for that so that everyone is successful moving forward. Joe.
So can I say something? So I want to make sure I'm understanding this. So we're saying the proposal, or a proposal, is to take 6 of the 8 early release days, and that would equate to the 2 full PD days,
Right.
that we want to add. Okay. So
Correct.
now for the teachers to make up those and let the teachers go home at the same time, and then we're saying add the 2 days to the end. What if we just eliminated the early release days for students too? Or do we not want to go there because of parents already having planned, or what? I don't know. Why couldn't, in other words, that's another proposal I would make, is just make those full days. Then we don't have to add any days on.
Yeah, it
Right?
doesn't work that way, because the state an early release day is considered a full day of school already.
Oh,
So that it doesn't, I understand what you're saying from a teacher standpoint, we account for the hours that way, but for students, as soon as they walk through the threshold that day, there's no more of a minimum hour requirement. It's considered a school day.
no, I know, but at least it would be putting it back to a full day for the teachers.
But
Right.
yeah, but we're not looking at, the teachers are doing plenty. This is not about the teachers here. This is about the fact that there's a desire not to add any days to the end of the school year on the behalf of what I just heard. So it's not, that won't help us with that fact.
Okay.
So the only thing you could do is you could add one day and do away with the PD in March and have that a student day and have 4 days instead of 5 and have students start on a Friday, or you could have the PD day be on Friday before, because according to the teacher contract, they could come back the Thursday before. So you could have Friday PD, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Don't change the school year for the kids at all. Have it still start on a Thursday. That's another option. Again, trying to, because I hear, and I shared with the union, because we had already had conversations, that I didn't believe the board, and we only have a representative of 3 board members here, but I don't believe the board would go for cutting a student day at all. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we had this conversation, because I know that was a concern to the union. And the other thing is, we don't change anything. And, at that point, we put the time that we could put in, and obviously our requirements from the state will take precedent over classroom time for teachers to prepare. We can't do both. We have to make sure that we're following the guidelines from the state so that our students and our staff are safe, and making sure that we have personal protection equipment explained, making sure that they're getting all of those trainings. So we're not looking to have a convocation, obviously. So that gives us a little bit more time. We're not looking to probably invite parents in to see their child's classroom, because that wouldn't be healthy probably. So we do have some time. So, I mean, again, if we want to do that, I just would want it'd be very difficult for us to think that we're going to be able to offer a lot of time for teacher prep, knowing how much we want to make sure that we establish a good foundation for students and staff, because the teachers have been away from their classrooms physically, not virtually. They've been in their classrooms, but physically for a while. So I know that there's a lot, that they would probably want to do. Joe?
So just from my perspective, I'm less worried about adding calendar days at the end of next year. I'd be more concerned with coming back that week prior. So I view the only really option is extending it out to the end of the year to the 14th and taking those 2 days that week in August. I really don't want to interfere with anyone. I think we'd be looking at that 3rd week in August, and I'd rather leave that for everyone to be home and not worrying about school.
I would agree too.
So in my opinion, I'm less worried about pushing it to the 14th than I would be about asking them to come back into that 3rd week.
Sammy, go ahead.
Can I just hear from, am I muted?
No, you're good.
Can I just hear from the teachers, what would be easier, having 5 PD days in 1 week? Because that's a heavy haul too. Or would it be easier to split it with 2 days 1 week and 3 the following, and keep the start date the same? I know it goes into the 3rd week of June, but coming back after being out of the classroom that long and having 5 solid days of PD, that could be tough too. What do they think? No one?
Tickets?
I hadn't thought of it that way, so
Okay.
seriously, I hadn't actually thought of it.
So I think that the 4 days is easy to do without much disruption to the calendar, and is a nice compromise to the 5 days. I think that if we have professional development in place for the COVID training, that we can deliver that training in 4 days. Yes, there is time that teachers need to be in their room. I think it's 2 hours. So that can be a break in the middle of the week, maybe, to give them their 2 hours to work in their classroom. And that would kind of break up that 4-day stretch. To go to 5 days would push us to 189 days for teachers, which our contract is 188.
That's what I was wondering.
So that presents a problem for us representing the membership.
Yeah.
And I'll be gone because I'm retiring in another 2 weeks, but Ann will have to answer to that. And that is a disincentive across the board.
Yeah.
For us.
Just,
So
to
I
be,
think,
just to be clear, that was never any of the recommendations that we made as a central office staff to the teachers prior to this meeting. So
Right.
that was never the case. We were always looking for the 1-for-1. I think the sticking point was the extension of the school year, the day. That was the sticking point. And in doing so, the recommendation, as you could hear, and I not that I'm a mind reader, but I told you all that most likely reducing the student year would be tough.
Yeah.
So I think that's our rub that we have. The only other thing is, and I don't know, I'm just putting this out there, is a family going to bother sending their child to school on a Friday or take that week if things are open around to go travel? Are they going to send their child to the first day of school on a Friday?
Yes, they are, because they're going to say, "Oh my God, you haven't been in school since March. Go, child, go off and be out of the house."
I don't know. I'm just putting it out there because I know we hear both sides. So
North Haven has PD on Fridays all the time. So I'm just, from the other side of it, and they don't seem to have this, like we never do PD on Friday. We're always afraid, that whole thing, and they don't seem to have that issue that we worry so much about on those things. So just saying that on the other side, I think they'll send them. They're like, "Oh, you can have one day, and then, we'll see if you get COVID." And sorry, I know we're on air, so I shouldn't say that out loud. Okay. I think that it does come into play whether the 1-day Friday, but at the same time, I worry about extending the school year. I worry about, obviously, we have to stay at the 188 for the contract and for our members. Tammy does make a great point about the longevity of our, the stamina of our teachers that first week back, but I think we can do it. And once again, the 4 days versus 5 days for the teachers as well.
Any other comments?
I'm just looking, are there any other days that we're taking off that we technically don't have to?
Yeah, I kind of looked through that. I didn't see anything.
I don't see
Without
any.
like shortening April vacation, which I'm sure nobody would want to do.
Right.
No, that plays into my other all concern about no one's had a lot of a getaway family time, and I think a lot of people will be reaching for that.
I don't see anything on the calendar that can be,
We do a good job with our calendar, keeping it trim.
Karen?
Yes, can we deliver the amount of PD that we have in mind in the days that have been suggested?
In just the 4 days? Is that what you're saying?
Right, I'm trying to get a sense of, I want to make sure that the staff feels safe, that the students feel like they understand what's going on. To me, this is most important from a public health standpoint, that, parents feel comfortable that everyone is well in service on what they need to do to protect everyone. That's my concern going forward for the professional development. Do we feel that can be accomplished? Or do we need that extra time? That's what I'm trying to ascertain.
I think it's very difficult to say definitively that if all the work that is going to have to be explained and understood and be ready to apply by Friday is going to happen in 4 days. The other rationale was for having the full weeks, if there were things that we had to, as an administrative team, taking reflection from teachers, even though we're going to have the volunteers, hopefully from teachers working with us through the summer on the different committees. But if we had new ideas that came forward, we could work on that weekend like we usually do. to put those in place for the first day of school if it were on the 31st.
Right.
So the thing is that, none of us can say, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know to what extent there's going to be, even more changes than what we're hearing. So I think it's difficult to say. I know that we definitely wanted to spend a day about social emotional aspects of students returning to our schools, talking about the whole idea of structure, because a lot of our students, while being home, the structure is not the same of being in a classroom with their peers. Be it if it's only 10 students in the fall, if that's all that's allowed, or if it's a class of 24. The challenge is going to re-inculcating those students into a school structure. And then also explaining what are the new protocols that students have about going to the nurse or not going to the nurse, pick up, drop off, lunch, recess or lack of recess, all of those things. So that's like definitely a full day. Then you have, prior to that, we have to go over just what does it mean to be an employee in Wallingford Public Schools, or I shouldn't even say Wallingford Public Schools, any public school in the country. So we were looking at potentially having an epidemiologist come in and talk a little bit about COVID. What are the new opportunities for COVID in terms of understanding it better? What does the CDC know differently than they do now, which we know there's so much coming out all the time. So we wanted that to occur. And then go through all of the technical things. Staff obviously have to, as if the recommendations continue, we have to have staff do self-monitoring of their wellness prior to coming to work. We have temperature checks, we have all the questions, all of those things. So, again, a pretty full day. Then we want to go to technology, because I don't think any of us, while I believe and I hope that every teacher will be in their classroom every day next year, it doesn't mean that students necessarily will be in their classroom every day. So we still will have to be prepared for distance learning. So we're not going to just put it up on a shelf and have to dust it off in an emergency. So there's a lot of technology support that we'll still have to provide for teachers when we're getting great feedback from teachers on how to make some of that easier for them next year, which we want to spend a decent amount of time on. And then most importantly, beyond the social part of our students, is the academic piece. Unpacking the standards based on what needs to be accomplished, because we have different students coming to us in the fall than left us on March 13th. So we need to really look at the curriculum and make sure our curriculum coordinators have a sufficient, and not just an hour or a half hour, but really a good amount of time unpacking those standards and identifying what are we going to do to meet the students where they are and help for remediation as well as acceleration. So those are, that just did 4 days, but those are packed days. Can we do it? Absolutely. We'll do whatever the board tells us to do and whatever the board decides, because this is, obviously our responsibility. And I know our teachers will do the same thing, because we care about, most importantly, our students. So we'll do whatever we feel is appropriate. I just don't think 3 days was enough. And I would hope that everybody would agree that 3 days probably would not have been enough for us in this year with the circumstances that we're faced with. So those are just some of the high level things. I'm sure I missed some, but those are the key pieces. And we want to make sure that the teachers hear all of the plans, because we have 9 COVID committees working right now. And, it's from transportation to food services to special ed to curriculum to technology to facilities to health and wellness, you name it, we got a committee. So we do need to make sure that information is appropriately disseminated and clear communication is provided for the teachers so they best can be prepared for their students when they arrive the first day of school, whatever it's Friday, Monday, Thursday, whatever day. We just want to make sure it's the best experience for everyone.
So I just have a comment based on what you said, Sal. It sounds to me like the 5 days would be more beneficial to the teachers. I can't imagine they wouldn't want 5 days, so that it's not all jammed in and rushed and overwhelming. So I don't understand why the teachers wouldn't want to take the opportunity to take advantage of having those 5 days. Joe.
And then just to add to that, Mrs. Castelli, if we are not coming back and we are online, many hours of that 5 days is going to be them developing their Google Classrooms with their class lists so that on day one, we are prepared to go online with students. And that could look different at every level. But I think it's important to have a little bit of that wiggle room potentially for those that need to prepare their online coursework within that 5 days. So I would agree with you. I think that 5 days is important and will not go to waste.
So Lou, I would ask you, is this something that you should be asking the teachers for input on? What if they would be willing to do the 5 days and add the 2 days to the end of the year? Or do you just think that's a showstopper? You're on mute.
Well, just based on my past experience, it would be a showstopper. I wouldn't even ask them because I know what the answer will be. I think that, I think we're here, in order, I think we have a nice compromise on the table. I think that the best case scenario would be the 5 days but we don't want to reduce the student day. And I don't want to increase the teacher work year past 188 days.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, because that's what this will do. We'll work 190 days. And our contract is 188, and I know that I'll get a lot of feedback from staff. So I think that having the 4 day as opposed to the 5 day and not affecting anyone's schedule, the student's schedule, the teacher's schedule, I think that's just a wonderful compromise. And I think that would be our best solution. It'll work. And it's not going to affect anybody, and it's not going to affect the end date on the calendar. And just a couple of things to your point, Kathy, and to Joe, who piggybacked off of that. So we're dealing with teachers who are highly educated, and we've had the last 3 months of living in a COVID world. I think a lot of the protocols, and it's been on the news, that a lot of them are common sense protocols: washing your hands, covering your face, not touching your eyes. So a lot of those things for students are going to be, they're already ingrained in teachers already. We already have that down, just like I teach phonics every day to my kids. So I think that a lot of that is already embedded and ingrained in teachers. And I think we're looking more at the physical challenges. And if we come back to school, like, how does your room look? How do kids pass in the hallway? All of those things. And I think that, just like when I teach my kids, soft or hard vowel sounds, or, long vowel sounds, I'm sorry. It takes a long time. I had 2 or 3 or 4 different lessons over a course of a week or so. I think the teachers are going to get it. We come in on Monday, you start talking about all the precautions and all the things that you want to implement. We're there. We're going to get it. We're going to absorb it. We're going to implement it. We've had several months of COVID living under our belts. So I think that we can do it in the 4 days. And I know that there's the other element that Sal mentioned in terms of curriculum. We do want to, I guess, Sal, if I heard you correctly, you also want to be able to do curriculum PD. Is that true? Is that what I heard you say?
Well, of course, because we have the fact that we have to look at where the students are coming in. So we need to talk to the teachers like the coordinators have already been doing, is talking with the different content areas about what are the key standards to be addressing, looking at evaluating students a little bit differently. So there's a lot of work there, and then determining, once we have that data, how are we going to structure our school day to provide that time? So, those are all layers. So we would definitely want to offer curriculum time, because that's the core of the work of teachers. And I know that's what we hear often the most about, is making sure that the curriculum is in a place that they can access it and that they know the expectations. So we'd want to make sure that we offer them time. And I think that's what you're saying, is that you would want to do that too.
Yes. So the 4 days won't be, even if we had 5 days, it wouldn't fully be committed to the COVID and precautions and structure and all that.
But it's all connected, Lou. When you look at it, as I said earlier, there are 9 committees dealing with the topic of COVID, and one of the 9 is curriculum. It's hard to take one out and say that it's not impacted. So It all is connected. It's all tied together. I mean, because we'd want to, I mean, transportation, as much as, that's going to be a key piece that teachers at all levels understand how we're transporting students. What are the expectations? All those pieces. Food services, cafeteria is going to be a key thing for at all levels as well. And then just in terms of maintenance, where you're going to find the supplies, what supplies are there. Again, some of these might be easier and quicker than others. But I agree. I mean, if we're looking for a compromise, then I think we look at 4, and we'll work together as we've always done. And move forward. I just didn't think 3 was appropriate. I just don't think 3 with the fact that, and you also have to realize there's also the social piece of teachers. Depending on how open the state is by that point, this might be the first time some people have physically seen each other in many, many months. So we want to also take that into consideration and have buildings be able to have some of that time with the principals to also re-engage as a school family. I don't want to underestimate those relationships, because teachers, they're like family. I mean, when you're on a team of teachers, be it a grade level or a team in a middle school or a department at the high school, I know they're staying in contact, and this is nice, but to actually be able to see your colleague, they might not be able to, have the hug that they would normally have, or the handshake or high five. But we want to make sure we also feed that part of it too.
So Joe, I think you've been trying to get in.
Yeah, well, the only thing, just Lou, I don't think we should add days onto your contract, just to be clear. I just think we should substitute some of the days at the end. So like even if we had 5 days, I just think we take them away from somewhere within that year. So I didn't want you to think I was adding years to the teacher contract. I just think we need to substitute it somehow.
Right. But how do we do that?
Yeah, how do we do it?
Is the question.
Right. So I think that's where Mrs. Belizzi was talking about, taking 6 of those half days,
Right.
to make up for it. So, I mean, I don't know how yet, honestly, but I think I would definitely look to keep it at the 188 and, see how we make that happen.
So where do we think we're at right now? The proposal, I think I understand it. The compromise is put 4 days in the beginning of PD and add 1 day to the end of the year. Is that correct?
No. We would need to add the day. We wouldn't need to add the day. We most likely take the March PD day, or, I mean, again, it could go either way. You take 3 of the early release days and you oh, actually, no, that wouldn't work. I'm sorry. It would have to be the March day, because then you would hold, you would keep the student year the same. I apologize.
Okay,
sorry.
Okay. Gotcha.
That's the easiest way to do it. Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Ann.
That's the easiest swap to do in terms of, swiftness and neatness, if you will, is to take the March day out and put it in at the beginning of the year. And then nobody will, it's the neatest way to do it. And students start on Friday.
Okay, so then who communicates this to the teachers? If this proposal went through as, 4 days PD in the beginning, no change to the elimination of the March PD day, who communicates this change?
Well, we are on YouTube.
Well, but the thing is that what would happen is that the board would have to approve this. So this would go on a board agenda. The board would approve it if that were the case. And then usually what happens is the next day, Danielle's office sends out the revised calendar and says this was approved in collaboration through the education committee, that whole thing. And we do that. I mean, we've changed the calendar before. So I don't think it's going to be shocking to people. And I really don't believe, unless I'm crazy, I don't think teachers, if that's the swap we make, I don't think that the added PD day at the beginning of the year is going to be something shocking to them, because I think we all realize, even though I know we're all living COVID right now, living COVID in your house versus living it in with a group of people of 40 to 100 people, staff members, that's going to be a different scenario. So I think that people would understand the need for the day at the beginning of the year. I think that, again, if it's a swap, then it's just a swap.
Right.
Kathy,
Okay.
Kathy, I can assure you, it'll be fine. If it's the swap day, teachers won't have a problem with that extra, with the swap of the PD day in the beginning of the year. And like Sal said, we have sent out revised calendars throughout the
Right.
years numerous times without issue, so.
Okay. All right. So do we
Danielle,
want
can
to
you
settle that that's what we're going to do?
Sure.
Tammy?
Danielle, can you just walk through again, if we wanted the student year to end on the 11th, if we were okay with that, where would we take from in the existing calendar so the teachers would not have to go over the 188?
Right. So they're suggesting to take the full March professional development day. If I have
Yeah,
this
that one, it seems like we're all okay with that.
right.
But for the 5th day, if we wanted to do that 5th day in August for a full week of PD
Correct.
and have the students get out on the 11th instead of the 10th,
So if I look at the calendar, I'm trying to see here what other day we would have to be able to take away. So it looks like November 3rd, election day, we have a full day professional development day. So that's a full day.
But we can't have kids in schools because it's a presidential election.
Correct.
Right.
So we can't do that day.
but could we have the teachers not have PD that day? And just make that a day off for everyone?
But then you cut the student year by a day. You're still.
Aren't they off already?
No, but the thing is though that, are you bringing the students back still? Because the Friday, you're still cutting a student day because you lost Thursday and Friday. You picked up only one day in March.
Right.
Unless you extend the school year the one day. If you want to extend the school year the one day, then that would work because teachers would have a day off, students would still have the day off, but then we would only be extending the calendar by one day.
So how does that scenario work, Lou? Or Ian?
I was hoping you forget me in the corner here.
That seems like a pretty basic compromise.
So the November 3rd day, if we took that off as a teacher day, so that would add a day to the year, to the end of the year.
Correct. It'd be one day at the end of the year.
Right.
So you'd be June 11th instead of the 10th.
I know what I was doing. I got distracted.
And
Hold on.
yeah, so I know that it's one day. I just think that what Ann had mentioned earlier in our discussion is that
Yeah.
it's like, yes, we had a wonderful winter of very few snow days. This year, I know working with Danielle on the calendar in the past, we've had 10 days for, we've had 9 days off. We've had those October thunderstorms where the trees came down and we lost time. So I just think that having that 4th day changes nothing. And we go in and we come out and everything stays the same. I'm just questioning the need for that 5th day.
To me, to me, the offer was to give the teachers more time. Tammy?
Well, I think if we're saying that the teachers want that week in August, I appreciate that. And if the teachers are saying that they can handle the 5 days of PD at once, I get that. And you had a good point about adding 2 days to the end of June. That would bring us into a whole nother week. June 14th would dig into and touch another week off for teachers and families. But to swap November 3rd as a working PD day and then add June 11th, that's still a Friday. Am I missing something? We're still ending the same week. We're still starting the same week. We're just moving in between.
Mm. I agree with you, Tammy.
So then we have, so what'll happen is if we have more than 5 snow days, then it pushes us ahead into the 3rd week of June.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Because we'll be ending on a Friday. So if we have 1 snow day, we'll be coming back on Monday,
14th.
the 14th, which will then, I can guarantee you, most of the kids won't come back to school that day. But I know we're worried about the Friday in the beginning of the year. A Monday as the last day of school at the end of the year is probably, and you might have the statistics. It'll be a heavy day for student absences. And then it just pushes us out another week with snow days.
I think historically, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Tammy.
I know we've historically had that 8 or 9 before we touch April vacation. Do we reduce that to the 5?
That is reduced. We do reduce it to the 5 next year. I think we start, I think
No, the
Friday the
calendar
18th is the last day.
The calendar
Yeah,
I'm looking at says any days beyond 8 will be made up at the beginning of, or at the end of April vacation.
Okay,
Right.
sorry.
Right. I only referenced 5 because what 5 does is pops you into the next week. So 8 would clearly project you into the next week for sure.
But I'm saying if that's an issue, do we look at that?
No, the amount, I mean, I would like to maintain the 8 days because what that does is it kind of gives you a more, there's never a guarantee, but it gives you a better guarantee, a better percentage that your April vacation remains intact. And I mean, I would be lying if it wasn't important to teachers, but I will say in terms of students, you start taking away days in the April vacation, we have a huge reduction in student attendance.
Okay.
So it's kind of like we lose those days. I mean, you have a class of 20 and then all of a sudden you have a class of 14. It's, you have all those kids that miss out and have to get made up the week after when they come back. So
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was the celebration rescheduled, 350 celebration rescheduled for Saturday the 19th.
No, they're doing it in 2021 now. They totally moved it.
Right.
Yes, that's.
June. I'm sorry. I'm saying June 19th. Does that have any impact? I remember when we made the calendar before, we had talked about with the mayor not interfering with the celebration. Has he said, did I
We
miss
haven't
anything?
heard anything on that this year. And,
Okay.
any way that you look at it, I mean, the reality is that I know they had different ceremonies planned and different celebrations, but I think everything is being revisited because of the circumstances that we're faced with. I mean, it's very sad that, obviously they can't celebrate it this year. So.
Right. Okay. So I just wanted to kind of just bring that up because I'm just looking through some of my notes. So, okay. So did we?
I would ask this: do we feel we could deliver the PD in 4 days? That needs to be delivered.
Again, we don't know enough right now, but we know that we need at least 1 day. So I guess the thing is that we all know that beginnings and endings, our society doesn't do well. No matter what we do, we don't do beginnings and endings well anymore. They're very stressful for everybody. They'll be stressful for our staff. They'll be stressful for our staff who have children who are potentially going to school, maybe not going to school. So we know there's going to be a lot going on that people are going to bring. And so that's why we're trying to give this. We're trying to look at the social and emotional well-being of everybody moving forward, giving the time so we didn't have to feel that we were sticking a 10-pound bag of potatoes in a 5-pound bag. So we were trying to give that gift of time so that people could take a deep breath. We can have them digest it, because oftentimes, and we're not the only districts will get criticized because, well, we didn't have any time to ourselves during the setup for school. Well, I can't guarantee that with this, I'm going to be able to give that. I don't know enough right now. And
Right.
we'll wait on this decision and do it later, but we wanted to try to have our teachers leave with an understanding of the start of the school year out of respect to them, and our parents understand the beginning of the school year out of respect to them as well. So it's tough. We were trying, and I don't get a sense that anybody's disappointed that we wanted to have this conversation. We were just trying to be respectful of all the different parties, because the beginning of the year, as I said, is very stressful. The end of the year is very stressful. It's just a very, those are two times that you would think there's excitement, but there's also stress. And again, we don't know. I mean, a lot of our teachers don't live and work. They don't live in Wallingford. They work in Wallingford, but they don't live in Wallingford. We don't know what their beginning of the school year is going to be like for their child. So that's another piece that, we wanted to be able to be, okay, well, if it's a little bumpy at the beginning for people who don't live in Wallingford, which it's a good portion of our staff, we were trying to be supportive of that. Again, if the decision and the consensus, which again is the three board members and 3 of the teachers, that if the consensus is that we do the one day and we add the one day, then we add the one day. This isn't a confrontational matter. This is meant to be collaborative and supportive.
Karen. Go ahead, Karen.
Yes. I know my daughter teaches in another district, and I'm usually pressed into service for helping her to set up her classroom. She's at the elementary level. And I'm wondering if there will not be as much done with regard to some of that, because what is our disinfection and things like that? What is that looking like for classrooms, et cetera?
I mean, there's still a lot to be determined. We have not received official guidelines. We only have guidelines for summer school, which if those guidelines carry over, they're very, 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 very stringent. So we're going to, even with the teachers, that's a whole nother thing, is that we're having teachers come into the building, and those rooms have to be cleaned obviously before they get back in the building the next day. And then especially for Thursday going into Friday, with all of the little cherubs coming in throughout the district, that's an additional opportunity for us to have to clean. We were thinking with the weekend, the virus has been, again, the data could be all over the place, but usually over the period of a couple of days, the virus is less contagious, but also it gives us the time of the weekend to clean the building deeper, so that we have a first day with more bodies in the building for the kids. Again, the teachers do not represent a huge amount of people in the building. So I'm not saying they're going to go around and they're going to, there's a lot of dirty things going on. I mean, that's not the case with that. But I'm just being honest. We don't know that this is stuff that none of us in teacher preparation or administrator preparation or superintendent preparation learned about. This is not anything that we ever dreamt we would have to worry about. So, but there's a lot of protocols. I mean, every child's going to probably have to have their temperature taken, plus answer questions before they come into the school. So that we have to go through. But again, the cleaning part, that is a concern, because we are going to be hiring additional staff for cleaning. We'll probably be hiring additional staff to help with some of the protocols as well. That'll be 1-year appointments, of course, hopefully, knock on wood. Dr. Fauci today said that he didn't know if the vaccine that was being created was going to be long lasting. So we hope that that's not correct. But again, that's the best guess we have right now.
Danielle.
Right. Looking forward, I mean, I know that we've been through disinfection through another organization that I belong to. And there were a lot of things that had to be taken into consideration. And one of them was to minimize the amount of decoration, what have you, that is contained in a classroom, not because we don't want to do that. And that's typically what you see, bulletin boards, etc. But there's a concern about making sure that when we're disinfecting, we're doing a thorough job, and it's easier to do that if you don't have a lot of that around. And the other thing is, my concern is, and me not wanting to decrease the amount of student days is because we're going to be tacking on additional things going on anyway with having to have the students have their temperature taken, different things going on. And I'm wondering if that's going to cut into instructional time.
Unfortunately, it has to, because lunch is going to take probably twice as long as it used to, because we have to potentially, at this point, the idea is that it has to be served in the classrooms. So then you have that whole issue. So yes, there is a tremendous amount that has to be taken into consideration. The cleaning, the protocols, as you said, and there's a lot of training and just a lot of background information that has to be provided.
Right. I think about some of what we've planned just now for our staff that's been coming into the building just a few days a week, and the return to work handbook that we've prepared, the training that went into that for the staff, the acknowledgement of it, the cleaning protocols in our buildings. And that's just a small portion of the staff that's come back. Now we're looking at what the recommendations are for the summer school program, and we're revising our handbook for that. So again, that is involving a lot, and it's a lot of steps and procedures and things that we need to follow, put in place, train people for. And that's just on a smaller scale right now. Again, I don't know what the fall is going to look like, but in just looking at that, what has come out for summer school, there's a lot that's involved. And a lot of it is requiring us as a district to train the staff, the students, make everyone aware of exactly what it is that they need to do. And what we don't know exactly what the rooms are going to look like. And
to Karen's point, to your point, we're hearing, and the people who are coming back right now, we're telling them to take all the clutter off their desks.
Yes.
And we can't have extraneous items on their desk. And I think that the guidance, if we were to open tomorrow, the guidance to teachers would be, don't worry about having a tremendous amount of, it's horrible to say, but decoration in an elementary classroom, because we have to be very cautious as to what we can reasonably expect our staff to clean. And that goes for middle school and high school too, the counters, all those things. So that goes back to Lou's comment though, which I totally agree with, is that teachers are going to need time to understand the new physical reality of their space. Because again, if we're reducing the number of students in classes, or they have to be socially distanced, that's going to be a mindset that, and an opportunity for the teacher, he or she knows his or her classroom the best. They're going to need time to obviously do that. We're not going to go in there and, set up their room for them. When we'll help, there'll be people help them, but we're not going to go in and do it prior, because that's their home. They're away from home, and so, you don't want to do that. So again, I think it's a great conversation we're having. I don't think there's a perfect answer. I just think that any more time is needed, just because knowing, and I would assume that the union leadership that's on this meeting have gotten information from the CEA or even the NEA. There's a lot being discussed. And it changes all the time. So we're just trying to keep ahead of it. And, again, we don't have official, the state is working very, very hard. They're working diligently on providing us information. I'm assuming we'll get that within the next couple of weeks. But I don't see things being drastically changed. I do see staff being in the building every day, and potentially students not. That's the thing that I've been hearing a lot of, and I don't think I'm alone on that. I think that's been in other groups that's been shared. And I don't know that's to be the case. I'm just saying that's what I'm hearing.
Okay, Tammy?
I think I'm still kind of, the best scenario from what I'm hearing is we have a lot of PD that's going to have to happen, and we don't even know if that's all of it, because the guidance isn't really out yet. I didn't hear anybody disagree with doing the March 19th swap. Although for my family, it is St. Joseph's Day, Mr. Corso, so you're going to have to, work that day, but holiday here. And then I just go back to that November 3rd, if we just move that PD to the 5th PD day, and then move the student day to June 11th. We keep everything in the same existing weeks. I agree, Blue. I don't want to add, we can't add to 189 or when bringing the number up. But that'll at least get us to not even some cushion, because we don't even have all the guidelines yet. And look at everything that has to be done this year that's not had to happen in previous years. I don't think it's going to be like an extra day that there isn't stuff to do. There's going to be more coming.
And to be honest, how wonderful would it be if there's an extra day, to be honest, that we could be able to all take a deep breath, give the teachers the time to do some planning, that would be wonderful.
That's a nice problem.
I mean, that would be a wonderful problem to have, that the nation opened up and, we're all back to normal. We're sitting in restaurants shoulder to shoulder and, getting haircuts in groups rather than being called from the parking lot to go in.
Right, one at a time.
Going to concerts, going to a Yankee game finally. That would be wonderful. Being able to even watch one, right, Vanessa? Never mind even going. So, but again, I mean, I think you probably have two different ideas on the table, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but maybe you want to, I don't know. It might end up where we're at a stalemate. I don't know what to say.
Do you want time to think about this, guys, or are you just still decide, want just the 4 days? I'm in Tammy's camp. I think it's really, I'm afraid that, the teachers are going to be stressed out with not having enough time in the beginning of the year, but I'm not a teacher, so, leave that to you guys.
Yeah, if I voted, I would be against adding an additional day to the end of the year. Not an additional day, but prolonging
Right.
the school year to the Friday, because then the first snow day pushes us to Monday of the next week. If we do the full 8, we're going to be the last week of June. I just, I think 4
But it's
days
one
is
day,
enough.
Lou.
What's that?
It's one day.
Yes, it is. I know.
Yeah,
I know.
because chances are, if we have
Even
one snow day, we're going to have more than one snow day.
Sure.
Yeah, but even if we got out the 10th, we'd still be the same week if we had all 8 snow days.
Say that again?
Even if we got out the 10th and had all 8 snow days, we'd still be the same week.
Right. Right, we'd be the last week of June.
Right.
So one is an act of God, the other one is by our hand. So I would just throw that out there as well. So why ask for trouble? So I
think you're asking for trouble by not taking the 5th day in the beginning, but that's my opinion. I just think this stuff is overwhelming, I think. I don't know.
So, I mean, we have 3 other teachers on the committee here. I mean, not officially,
Right.
but I mean, if they have anything to add, that would be my opinion. I think we have a nice compromise with the extra day. I personally think 4 days is enough. I know that there's a difference of opinion, but you're asking me, so I'm saying. So I think
should we put this to a vote, Sal? Are we at that point where you want to put this to a vote, or what do we want to do?
I mean, you can. I mean, there's 3 board members, there's 3 teachers who are voting members based on the guidelines and policy.
So
I don't vote, Danielle doesn't vote, Joe doesn't vote, Carrie doesn't vote for the board, and obviously Sharon is here as the secretary. And then the union, I believe the president can't vote, but then there's 3 teachers. So you would have to just choose which 3 of you are going to vote, because there's 4 other teachers.
Right.
Or there were, there's 4.
Michelle.
Oh, Michelle. Okay.
I thought that had started.
So it's the 3 teachers and the 3 Board of Ed members. Basically, that's it. Who's voting?
Right. When I look at the teacher's contract under the Educational Council, that's what it says.
Yeah.
19.1. Am I
Yep.
correct there? It talks about who should vote and who should not. So 3 board members, 3 members of the teaching staff. But it says here, the president of the association or designee shall be non-voting member.
Right.
Just double checking. Okay.
So you can call the vote, call whichever vote you
Okay, well,
want.
I would, Tammy, would you like to make a motion?
I think Mrs. Levesque has her hand up.
Oh,
I
sorry.
just want to make sure that if the teachers have anything further to add, I'd like to hear what they have to say. No?
I'm not seeing any hands raised now.
Well, I just,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure they had the opportunity to say whatever it is they wanted to say as well.
Okay, so Tammy, would you make your motion?
I will. I'll make a motion that we swap March 19th, which is currently a student day off in professional development, for an additional professional development the first week of school in August, and give students an additional day off that week. And then also take professional development from November 3rd and move it to a 5th day in August, and move that extra day to June 11th that we're going to give students off in August. And again, this is the same week, and it begins the same week for the teachers.
All right, can I have a second?
Wait, hold on. I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a first and a second. I'll entertain, can we take all those in favor, say aye? Or let's go, do we, maybe we should do
have a
it, maybe
roll
we should do a
call.
roll call, yeah. So Karen,
Yes,
who are the three teachers that are going to be voting? All right, Vanessa,
No.
And
Catherine,
No.
Ann,
no,
Tammy,
Yes.
and I would be yes, so that's a tie, so it doesn't pass. So, well, it's Lou, would you like to make a motion?
well, I guess it would be my original recommendation that we move March 19th to the 4th, as the 4th PD day. And I mean, I hear you saying you don't want to reduce the student year, so I would just leave it at that, and we'd have 4 days of PD. So I would just make a motion to move March 19th to the Thursday and have 4 days of professional development in the school year in the beginning, and then start students on Friday.
Okay, can I have a second?
second,
Okay, that was Vanessa, right?
and
Yeah.
Oh, Ian, sorry. I saw
No.
Vanessa's hand go up. Okay, all those in favor, or again, I'm sorry,
I think-
roll call. So.
I think there's
Tammy?
a question.
Oh, do you have any, yes, comments on the motion? Tammy?
No, point of clarification. Will either of these, if it's a 3-3 in both votes, will either of these go in front of the Board of Ed for a full Board of Ed vote?
I don't believe that they can, because there was no consensus here. But Karen, as our historian from the board, if there are 2 3-3 votes, can they both go to the board and then the board vote on those? Or is it just dead here in committee because they were 3-3?
well, first of all, I know by the town charter, anything that needs to carry needs to be 5 affirmative votes by the board. This particular body is a subcommittee of the board. So I don't even know that technically, because it's a subcommittee, I'm not sure that we should be voting per se, yet taking consensus.
Correct.
And then it would
Well,
go
that's true,
to
it's
the full
consensus,
board.
you're right. You're right, it's really more consensus.
So if there is no consensus, then
Well, it's just like anything else. If there's no consensus, then it doesn't move on.
correct.
And then my understanding would be that the calendar would stay as is, and that would be a concern also.
Right. Okay, so let's move on with the voting for the second proposed motion. We're not voting, we're just taking consensus. So, Ian,
in favor, yes,
Catherine,
In favor.
Vanessa,
Yes.
Karen's on the phone. Tammy? Tammy? No, you're thinking.
I am thinking.
All right. You think. Karen?
Sorry, I had to take that because it was involving my son.
That's
So
okay. Consensus.
I hate to have you recap, but could you make me brilliant?
So it's just that we Lou's motion was to do the 4 days and remove the March 19th PD. That's it. No other changes. And that's what we're taking consensus on now. The 3 teachers have all indicated they would support that.
Support it. Okay. So where are we on board member input?
We haven't done any board members yet.
Oh, okay. So who's going first?
You.
Oh, good.
Because Tammy's thinking.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it myself because I would prefer the 5 days.
But that's
Quite
already
frankly.
been, they're not going to do that.
Yes, I'm aware. Just one question. Where are we with PD? Because somewhere in this morass of paper, I have the calendar, but heaven knows where I put it. What is the amount of PD at the beginning of the week again? Because we've had so much discussion.
3 days.
3 days.
The
So
motion
with this
is
motion, it moves it to 4 days.
4.
Well, I would say, I think clearly in my view, 3 days is not, oh, Tammy has a question.
You know what? I'm just not comfortable with not having enough time. So I'm going to say no.
Karen?
Well, I don't think it really matters what I say now because it's going to be a moot point.
No, you can vote
No,
yes,
I didn't vote
Karen.
yet. I didn't move consent. I didn't give my opinion yet. Do you want me to give my opinion first?
Go ahead.
All right, I'm going to support it because we've already agreed we can't do the 5. They're not willing to do the 5. I want them to at least do 4. So I feel forced into it, but you know, I definitely want them to have at least 1 extra day. So I'm going to support
That's
that.
why I didn't want to do it, Kath, because I didn't want to feel forced into it. If we need the additional time, then we need to think about another way to do this. Because I don't want the kids have been through enough and the teachers have been through enough, and I don't want the beginning of the year to start off on a wrong foot. Let's give them the time, the gift of time that they didn't have when they went out on distance learning.
Well, I can speak to that. I think that you won't have a problem with the gift of time for teachers in the beginning of the year with 4 days. Trust me. I think that the alternative with the 5 days and the extra day at the end of the year will create the opposite effect for teachers starting out the new year. So I think the 4 days, I mean, we don't know. Sal doesn't know, Carrie doesn't know, I don't know that 4 days or 5 days is or is not enough. I think to be able to grab an extra day for the 4th day and have that compromise and keep everything status quo, just my opinion again, and I'm not voting, but I just think that it's going to work.
Yeah, I'm going to support it. I want to move on. I want to make sure we have at least 1 extra day. And I don't know what else, if we don't come to consensus today, where that would leave us hanging. And I don't think from what I'm hearing in this conversation that really the teachers want to entertain any other option. I mean, that's just what I'm hearing. I'm not trying to be, negative or anything. I'm just saying that's what I'm hearing. And I do want to at least make sure they have at least 1 additional day. So I would support it.
And September 28th is our next early release professional development, which we will have, as well as the other 7. I think it's early enough still that if there's any, I mean, I wouldn't want to save the COVID training for that time period, but I think it's a good day for some curriculum training, or looking at where our students are at 3 weeks into school. I know Sal talked about that earlier. So I think that, it'll offer us that time. It's soon enough that we can take advantage of that.
Carrie has a comment.
I'm just going to say, and I know I'm a non-voting member as well, but in a normal year with 3 days, there's never enough time. So I just worry that with the COVID professional development that has to take place, the curriculum things that have to take place to consider the 3 months of school that we did distance learning wise, not to mention anything that we have to set into place for the 2021 school year, I have strong concerns. So I just wanted to make that known. Yes, we do have the early release days, and those are always filled as well. So, I don't think just saying, well, there's one in September, we'll have plenty of time. I just don't agree with that. So I would respectfully disagree and would feel that the more time we have up front, the better. But that's just my opinion.
Joe?
And I just add that from the principal perspective, even with the 3 days, we always feel like we never have enough time with our own staff. And there's a lot of things that we have to get done, so it's not a knock. But that additional day, the 5th day, might provide us that flexibility to actually have kind of school-based decisions. And we might all be in different places. Maybe elementary's coming back and high school's not. So we're going to have a lot of different kind of moving parts to address as administrators in the district.
Ian, go ahead.
You also, as a board, have the option to reduce the student year. I know you have said you don't want to, but you still have that option, keeping that and gaining that 5th day by doing that.
So now I have a question, and this one's for Sal. If we pass consensus here on this particular motion, then it moves to the full board, correct?
Yep.
It could still die.
Right, so it can still die, but at least we're getting it exposed and discussed again. So that's why, again, I would like to support it to get it at least to the board for further discussion.
So Karen, we're waiting with bated breath for your decision.
Well, with that in mind, because I would prefer to have 5 days, I am not in favor of in any way cutting back on the student number of days, because as I said, I think we're going to have other things eat into instructional time as it is. For the purpose of moving it forward for discussion at the board, I will vote yes, but I want to be clear that I am not in favor of just the 4 days.
Right,
I would like 5, but I would, I can bring it to the board and then there can be a full discussion there, because as I said, this is only a subcommittee of the board. It is not the entire board.
Right.
And so I am not in favor of just the 4. I think we have a lot of in-servicing to cover. But
unlike a contract being ratified, because you're voting for this does not mean you have to vote for it if you chose not to at the board meeting. No violation. But if in a contract, obviously if you vote for it as a member of a union leadership team or a member of a board team that's negotiating, you can't change your vote when you bring it to the board. This is different than that.
Yeah, because this is a subcommittee, and I'm being clear why I am doing this, because I would like the full board to have an opportunity to weigh in on this.
Right, which they now will. Which they now will. Okay, so this motion passes, or it's not a motion, so it's not just consensus. We've reached consensus for the 4 days.
To the full board.
And we'll move it forward now to the full board.
Yep.
Okay.
So
That'll go on the agenda for, I believe the board meeting is the Let me just make sure. I think it's the 15th. Yes, it's the 15th of June. I just want you to, just to make sure that anybody who's watching, or obviously the people that are involved in this meeting, know that that'll be the meeting.
Okay.
So,
All right. Anything else
right.
for the good of the order here, this meeting? Then I'll call the meeting adjourned.
have a
Thanks,
good
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.